distribution. That's what I would say the best framework. As it is, it's written, that agreement has not been changed that much. But then, and of course, there are interventions to instigate this. But I think the dam project, whether it's a project in Sudan or Egypt or others, like the Aswan Dam, end up being in some part an environmental disaster. And it was also archaeologically, all of this has really bad impact. You talk about it. A lot of research in archaeology, art, and all of this is very bad to the ground. There was a rescue, what they call it, excavation, but it's really never completed as a project. So that's what I could say generally about that issue. So in terms of the relationship between all those, of course, Sudan has its own problem. The partition, which is something that is, I'm happy I wrote about it, I can send you. I'm fundamentally against it. I don't believe in this further fragmentation of countries. Otherwise, every single African country has, there is an issue of injustice, inequality, there is a certain ideology espoused by central government Sudan, mostly dominated by the northern Islamized elite who really ignore the issue of diversity and how to, the idea of coexistence and so on. So these are all, of course, but it's also a fundamental question in Sudan in terms of culture. In terms of who the Sudanese and what it meant. Poetry, artists like Salah and others try to forge the question of identity becomes central in the context of diversity. So managing that diversity and really celebrate it as something beautiful rather than damning is also an important progressive project. Is that is for Sudanese who are really thinking about those in a much more progressive, forward-looking, the question becomes creative question. And that's why the fight against this regime that espouses certain ideology at the expense of others, which translate to economic injustice, so it becomes central to that kind of project. And maybe it's utopia. Maybe the artists think about utopia by borrowing symbols from every culture and try to create a movement that they cause in poetry, in writing, in everything, happens. But it's a struggle. So I would just summarize it. And it has to remain a question of how do you really create a new nation that is cosmopolitan, that's forward-looking, that's inclusive, that is also in which everyone can have an equal share and well represented within a larger nation or nationalist project.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah. Yes.
So, you were talking before about movements that really got on to kind of what inspired that you said to learn from. And you mentioned the Black arts movement in Britain, Rashid, and I guess my question is two-part. And with the Black arts movement, Black art did not always mean Black. You weren't actually Black. It just meant you're from a post colonial country, and it was all these people from recently decolonized places who were working together. Rashid already was really Black himself, and he was one of the writers on Black art, and he wasn't. And when did that stop? And do you think it's important for African art now? When people think of African art, they imagine the artist look in a certain way. I'm also not for the whole delineation of sub-Saharan, and it's more complicated than that. But when people think of African artists, they don't think of Algerian artists, so you don't think of artists who look like that. And how do we kind of work to change?
I'll start with the British experiment in the Black art is a late come. It's an 80s movement.
Right.
The American one is earlier, 1960s. It was tied to the larger Black liberation project in the States. And so it's mostly African American, but it's also African artists who lived, they were part of it. People like Skunda Bogosian and others were at Howard, where Jeff Donaldson, all of those people. So they were part of the Afro-Cobra movement. You'll find people who Afro-Cobra itself. And I happen to have published in an essay by Jeff Donaldson in the book that's called 7 Stories About Modern Art in Africa, as part of the document in the back. An essay by Jeff Donaldson. Read it, you'll understand. He's an African American who came to he came to Festac.
Yeah.
And Festac has been very important for him. That's where he met Salah, he met all these Bruce Onokopaye, all of those people, and have been very important in his formation. So that's the African Americans. In England, the question becomes, most people of color identified at that time, Indians and Pakistani, Filipinos, and others identified, Indonesian and others as part of that. That was the early phase. After that, of course, the market opened up, everybody pursued their own and so forth. But a lot of them really remained faithful to those earlier solidarities that happened, in which the rubric black it was really bigger than what we think. What's the second part of the question? Sorry, I forgot that. Getting older.
The image of blackness now in Africa, or like
Okay.
the image of Africa, African being African.
So this is what I will tell you. What is defined as African?
Right.
To give you an anecdote that I felt was the best vindication that we have from the Venice Project. Okay? We've had 2 shows when we rented the building. There was one floor in which, but then above us, there was either Yugoslavia, one of those former Soviet Union, satellite republics. And so there was, I remember a woman, a European woman who came in and then went through our show, and when she's leaving, she said, "Where is the African exhibit?" I said, "It's the one that you just came out of." So she came with a specific expectation of what African life should be like. It was perhaps like those paintings that you see in Goree Island, at the street of Dakar, or near the Amina Castle, or something like that. Those guys would say. That's what in their mind is either that or African sculpture. That out of Conde or tourist art. That was her expectation. So I thought that's an amazing vindication, is that she got what she never really expected. That it doesn't have to be different. And so my answer to you would be is that in that show we try to dispel these dichotomies. So we started by specifically bringing North African with us, because we believe that Africa, even sub-Saharan Africa, that kind of school, based on the colonial, what I call the colonial trajectory within African studies. It is creating this artificial balance, trying to say, okay, North Africa up to Sudan belong to Middle Eastern studies. It came out of the idea of area studies in Western universities. Sub-Saharan Africa belonged, and they forgot that in the past, like, you cannot study the Akan, let's say, without thinking of the House of Quarters in Kumasi, or without thinking about the link to the north. Or also, if you just opened up, like, books of Arab travelers in this area, there's so much description in the pre-European contact with the Ashanti kingdom that actually existed in Arab narratives about it, which meant what? That the North was actually navigating. The relationship is much more complicated. There is an Islamic empire in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa that goes back to the 14th, 12th century. King Mansa Musa performing the Hajj order. So there is so many complexities, even sub-Saharan Africa. Who said it is that homogeneous? If you really think about it, it's much more complex than you expected. You have South Africa has an apartheid regime, but in the middle of that, the world becomes very messy. You have the Indians and others and black compose what we call today the colored people, which is part of that. You go to the Swahili coast, you find people who claim Persian origin, Arab origin. You find, okay, even in colonialism itself was very messy. Look at Ghana, look at Jerry Rawlings is an example of this kind of a very complex that cannot be racially defined in a very homogeneous way. So that's why my answer will be is that Africa is an intellectual construct. It means different things to different people. There are different trajectories, but we have to accept that diversity and complexity because and it has to be celebrated. Not celebrated for its ugly side, because of course there's enslavement, there's colonialism, there's trade, slave trade with North Africa via the Mediterranean, the Turkish Empire, all of those things, there's a painful side to that history. But it doesn't mean reducing that history to these, what I call that Africa become associated with what I call the darkest Africa syndrome in African studies, is that it has to be this authentically black, untouched. So you have to celebrate the Ashanti as a real Africans, or the Yoruba culture as this pure. Then you discover everything is you kind of go back, to face to discover that half of the Yoruba are Muslim, or probably 40%, 50%, who knows? I mean, so it's what I'm saying. We have to accept the complexity of Africa, and we have to think beyond the trajectories that either it is the Afrocentrics that celebrate early Egypt and the current Egypt, or contemporary Egypt, or it is the colonial one that celebrates authentically African as beyond south of the Sahara and so on. We have to accept that. And that's what we actually try to do in our scholarship. We look at, always work on the short century. Looks at Africa globally, North, Sub-Saharan, diaspora. The same thing we did from the beginning with authentic century. We've had so-called Arab North African, we've had a Ghanaian, Godfrey Donko, we have had a South African. So we tried from the beginning. We also looked at the gender balance. And we made sure that women are represented, the feminist perspective is represented. So these are the kind of projects in which you have to challenge those perceptions by really accepting Africa as much more complex. So thank you for raising that point, but that's very important to think about.
So, are there any more questions? I'm looking at the time, and you've been speaking for almost 2 hours.
Okay.
So, another 2 hours.
3 hours.
No, it's the teacher in me. It's okay.
No, it's incredible. But I'm aware as well of not putting too much demand on your time. But do people have more questions?
Is there a question that states it?
So, are you okay with answering more questions?
Okay, fine. That's fine. Let me just see. What is this phone call? Okay, just for a second. Just for a second. I'm about to take it. All the Americans and others stole all these things from the beginning. They deliberately left the museum to be looted. So in Egypt is the problem of the theft and the smugglers. But then the Egyptian, I think they're very good in terms of pushing legally, to repatriate their work. The Nigerians are now making strides in terms of the Benin objects. So that's happening. Because I know that there is a group of museums that met in Amsterdam that included Dutch, that included Germans, that included, and they're trying to reach some agreement with the National Museum or the National Commonwealth Antiquities in in Nigeria. And I'm saying the meeting, I think it just recently took place.
At the Children's Museum?
All of them, including the British Museum. So they're trying to reach an agreement with the Nigerian authorities of returning the object. But of course they want to work a condition in which it will be a win-win, meaning the object will be like a loan, they can be returned to Nigeria gradually, but then they will have access to it. Which I thought, okay, so the challenge is this. And that's we have to think about without being defensive, is that if we want repatriation, we have to be responsible about making our museums live up to the standards in terms of security, in terms of preservation, and so forth. So I would say in the